The THRYL were dying. No one knew why. The greatest xenobiologists across the spiral arms had studied them for decades, silent, gentle creatures older than most sentient life. But now, one by one, they lay still, their luminous skin dimming, their harmonic pulses faltering. The world they once resonated with no longer responded. Yelvani, the sole appointed steward of their sanctuary world, had exhausted every known avenue. The THRYL were more than a species to her. They were history made flesh, echoes of the galaxy's past, and now their silence was spreading like a funeral shroud. She transmitted desperate pleas to the Galactic Biodiversity Council. The response was always the same. Extinction is natural. Resources were limited. The THRYL were not economically significant. They labeled it a tragic loss and moved on. But Yelvani didn't. She couldn't. Night after night, she stood among the still forms, listening for a melody that no longer came. Each death etched itself into her mind. She wasn't a scientist anymore. She was a mourner. In a desperate turn, she began asking questions in places where official channels held no sway. Border worlds, fringe settlements, pirate markets. She spent favors, bartered technology, and traded her own blood for answers. Most gave only shrugs or lies. But one name came back, whispered like folklore. Elias Varn, the human who fixed broken things that shouldn't be fixed. No titles, no affiliations, just a man who did the impossible. Once, twice, always alone. He lived on a backwater moon near the edge of a decaying star system, in a rusted-out station repurposed from a mining platform. When she arrived, he didn't greet her. He scanned her ship from a distance, then let her dock. No words, just a silent invitation. Inside, the place smelled of oil, ozone, and something faintly sweet. She found him hunched over a metal slab, dissecting something that looked half organic, half metallic. "I heard you know how to save dying species," she said. "No introductions." "I don't. I know how to try," he replied without looking up. She explained the THRYL, their symptoms, the failed models, the mass resignation of hope. He didn't ask for data. He asked her to describe their sound, their rhythm, how they felt. Not symptoms. Experience. Emotion. She hesitated. He waited. She told him. He listened in silence, then stood and washed his hands. "Bring me there." They left that same cycle. On board her vessel, Elias wandered the hallways, touching the walls like he was reading the ship's story through vibration. He muttered about resonance, entropy, and something called harmonic decay. Yelvani had never heard those terms used that way. He asked strange questions. Had the gravity field shifted in recent years? Had the THRYL's song changed in frequency, not just tone? Did their colors dim evenly or flicker erratically? She answered as best she could. When they landed, he stepped onto the sanctuary ground barefoot. Yelvani watched, half annoyed, half curious. He approached a cluster of the THRYL, kneeling slowly. No scans, no equipment, just presence. One creature, weak and barely moving, raised its head and made a sound, a fragile, wavering hum. Elias closed his eyes. "They're not sick," he said. "They're starving." Yelvani recoiled. "We've fed them everything they've ever known. Their habitat is untouched." "No, not physically starving. Their environment's lost something they resonate with. Their world isn't broken. It's been unplugged." She didn't understand, but she led him through every chamber, grove, and sonic garden. He asked to see soil samples, not for chemistry, but for pattern. He touched trees, dipped his fingers into streams, watched insects move. He found a stream bed that once rang with harmonic vibration, now lay silent. He placed a hand on a THRYL stone spire, normally buzzing with sympathetic frequency, and felt nothing. "Something's eating their song," he said. "This isn't decay. It's predation." No algorithm predicted that. No model accounted for intentional harmonic disruption. It was madness. He built a lab from scrap. He refused galactic standard diagnostics, calling them sterile and blind. Instead, He used resonant coils, organic tuning forks, and something resembling a musical instrument. He created a frequency map of the sanctuary and overlaid it with historical data. The pattern was clear. Resonance had been bleeding out for decades, like a world quietly being exsanguinated. Giovanni submitted his findings to council. They dismissed them. The data was too unorthodox, the methodology too crude. They cited safety concerns and ordered her to restrict his access. She refused. They revoked her position. She stayed anyway. Elias began reintroducing harmonic bacteria, sourced from Earth. Giovanni protested. They could destabilize the entire ecosystem. He answered only with data. His bacteria thrived where nothing else lived and began emitting low-level resonance. The THRYL started responding, their pulses brightened by micrometrics. Still weak, still dying, but less so. Then the resistance came. An official delegation from the Ecological Council arrived, led by a three-eyed Arlocan envoy named Krez. He demanded Elias cease all activity. Elias pointed to the small THRYL pup resting against his leg, humming softly. The envoy didn't care. Unregulated biointerference is a felony, Krez declared. Let's see you enforce it, Elias replied. Krez left with threats and scans. Days later, orbital lockdown protocols activated. Sanctuary status revoked. The world would be sterilized. Giovanni panicked. Elias didn't. They're not going to make it in time, he said. He had a plan. A pulse, created by constructing a network of harmonic emitters calibrated to mimic the natural frequencies of the world before the decay. The emitters had to be placed manually. Dangerous terrain. Active zones. Short time. He did it himself. Giovanni watched him march into terrain that hadn't been traversed in centuries, dodging quakes, wild fauna, and unstable zones. He returned bruised, burned, and bleeding, but he smiled. One more. The final emitter had to be activated at the core node, beneath the sanctuary's heartstone, where resonance originated millennia ago. The chamber was unstable. The atmospheric pressure could crush him. She begged him to let someone else do it. They won't make it. You know it. I do, too. You'll die. He placed a hand on the THRYL pup's head. So will they. He descended. The pulse wave burst from the heartstone chamber an hour later. The air shook. The trees vibrated. The ground sang. Every THRYL lifted its head and emitted a note they hadn't sung in years. Elias didn't come out. Giovanni entered the chamber. He lay still, his body surrounded by the pulsing glow of resonance. Still breathing. Barely. She carried him out. The THRYL followed. For the first time in decades, the sanctuary echoed with song. Elias awoke to sound, not mechanical or artificial, but natural, living resonance, like 1,000 soft instruments harmonizing just beyond hearing. His body ached in ways that defied naming, and every breath scraped through a chest that felt crushed. But he was alive. Barely. Giovanni sat beside him, silent, watching. You made it, she said, voice low. He nodded. He tried to speak, but only a croak escaped. She offered him water. He drank. The THRYL had changed. Their skin glowed brighter now, and their movements bore fluidity once lost. They gathered near Elias's recovery pod in patterns that mimicked song structures, resonance choreography, as Giovanni called it. It was gratitude, perhaps even reverence, though no one dared presume understanding. But with life came attention. The pulse that reignited the THRYL's song had rippled far beyond the sanctuary. Deep space observatories had recorded the anomaly. Unknown harmonics had emerged in sensor arrays. Ships passing within light months reported instrument failure, sensory distortion, and auditory hallucinations. Something ancient had stirred, and the galaxy had noticed. Krez returned, this time with an armed escort. 4 patrol cruisers in orbit and a platoon of compliance enforcers on the ground. He didn't address Elias directly. He spoke to Giovanni as if she were a suspect. You are charged with violating interstellar biosafety protocols, unauthorized introduction of xenogenic agents, and obstruction of council directives. Step aside. Giovanni refused. Krez motioned for her detainment. Elias, still barely able to walk, stood and said one word. No. He had no authority, no title, but the THRYL responded. A wave of sound radiated from them, not violent, but resonant. It disrupted the enforcer's neural comms, knocked drones out of the air, and disarmed the compliance fields. The patrol cruisers experienced systemic overloads. Krez screamed into his comm, demanding retreat. They left in disarray. The THRYL had protected them. That act changed everything. Elias and Giovanni were no longer fugitives. They were now anomalies in a larger equation. Researchers from neutral systems requested interviews. The council denied access. Elias refused anyway. The THRYL had suffered enough under microscopes and politics. Instead, he worked. The resonance network wasn't a fix. It was a crutch, a cast on a broken limb. Without maintenance, it would decay. Worse, it was fragile. It relied on terrestrial emitters and harmonic injections. That wasn't healing. It was dependency. Elias wanted restoration. The THRYL deserved to be whole. He began mapping the ancient song of the sanctuary, using what fragments still existed. Giovanni scoured pre-collapse archives, some centuries old. Together, they recreated the original resonance ecosystem layer by layer. The harmonic bacteria he introduced had colonized deeper than expected. They were changing the soil, air, and even water acoustics. But new anomalies emerged. Other species on Sanctuary World, small, almost insignificant, began exhibiting new behaviors. Insects responded to the THRYL pulses. Trees altered their growth in rhythmic spirals. Even atmospheric patterns shifted subtly, cycling in time with the ambient song. Elias realized something terrifying. The THRYL hadn't just been singing with the world. They had been maintaining it. The resonance wasn't culture, it was control. Symbiosis. Without their song, entropy had crept in, not decay by time, but unbalanced systems collapsing. They were the keystone. He also realized something worse. The original harmonic structure wasn't entirely natural. Deep beneath the sanctuary, ancient relics began responding to the resonance pulses. Machinery unlike anything in modern catalogs, grown rather than built, composed of materials that shifted between organic and crystalline states. One structure pulsed in time with the THRYL, a buried node kilometers wide, once dormant, now waking. Elias descended again, this time not alone. Giovanni insisted. The node recognized the THRYL's harmonic signature. It restructured itself to match the new frequency. Elias ran diagnostics, primitive, makeshift yet effective. The structure was not of THRYL origin, nor any known species. It predated recorded galactic civilization. It was a seeding engine, a planetary resonance architect. The THRYL hadn't evolved here. They had been placed, or perhaps created, born to tune and maintain the balance, seeded by this ancient machine. But something had gone wrong. The song had fallen out of phase over millennia, slowly at first, then exponentially. The THRYL starved because their purpose was denied them. Elias shared this with Giovanni. She said nothing for hours. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. We were stewards of a cage. We thought we were preserving life. We were locking away. They face a choice: reactivate the ancient node fully or destroy it. If reactivated, it might restore the sanctuary and strengthen the THRYL beyond dependency. But they didn't know what else it might wake. If destroyed, the THRYL might never fully heal. Elias proposed a third way: modify the node, interface it with the modern resonance emitters, and allow the THRYL to dictate its function. Autonomy, not control. Giovanni agreed. The process required Elias to design a resonance bridge, a neural acoustic interface. He couldn't do it alone. He needed help, but not from the council. He reached out to another human. Rundal was a rogue synthesis who had once encoded a whale's dream into quantum rhythm. Brilliant, eccentric, impossible to manage. She arrived within a week, complained the whole time, and got to work the moment she saw the node. Together, they built the interface. It was messy, unstable, and beautiful. It pulsed like a heart and hummed like a choir. The THRYL approached, touched it, and began to sing. The node responded. The air shifted. Trees realigned. Insects reoriented. The atmosphere hummed in a frequency that matched no known model but balanced perfectly. The THRYL glowed with an inner light. For the first time, they danced, not in mourning but in freedom. And then the real problem began. The council returned. Not Krez this time. A full diplomatic armada. Warships escorted administrative carriers. They weren't here for negotiation. They were here for control. The sanctuary world was now labeled a Class Data Harmonic Asset, a designation created overnight. By law, it belonged to the Council. Elias was classified as a disruptive agent. Yelvani was branded a collaborator. Dahl was deemed an illegal modifier of xenostructures. The Council offered a deal. Stand down, let them take over, and no one would face prison. Resistance would be met with force. Quiet, professional, irreversible. Elias declined. The THRYL responded again. But this time, the pulse wasn't defensive. It was transmission. Every resonant organism, every adjusted tree, insect, bacterium, linked. The planet itself sang. The transmission broadcasted across quantum spectrums, bypassing encryption, slicing through firewalls and hijacking data streams. It told a story of a species ignored, of a human who listened, of a song restored. It went viral in moments. Public outcry flared. Council narratives shattered. Even soldiers questioned their orders. The council hesitated, then blinked, and pulled back.